The village of Caer the Los had long been forgotten by maps and satellites alike. Tucked between the jagged mountain ranges of the Sereth expanse, it existed like a fossil in the skin of a modernized Earth, untouched, unnoticed, and, to many, unreal. Dust-covered stone cottages leaned into one another like old friends, their thatched roofs thick with moss. At night, only oil lanterns lit the winding cobblestone paths. There were no hover cars here, no plasma lines buzzing across the sky. Only silence, broken now and then by the distant screech of a wind hawk or the groaning of the old windmill. Mara Kelwin had lived in Caer the Los her entire life. Her frame was frail, her hair a white tangle that refused to comb, and her gait uneven with age. Yet her eyes, blue and sharp as a frozen pond, never missed a detail. The villagers called her the Old Reader, not out of disrespect, but reverence. For decades, she kept to the ruins at the edge of the cliff, where an ancient stone library defied the ages and gravity. It leaned over the abyss, as though listening to secrets from the void below. Mara had inherited the place from her grandmother, who in turn had inherited it from some long-lost ancestor known only as the Lore Keeper. Few dared approach it anymore. They said it was cursed, that strange lights flickered through its broken windows, and that voices whispered in languages older than stars. But Mara remained, day after day, dusting off crumbling tomes and whispering words into the silence. What most people didn't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine, was that the books she read were not written by human hands. They were bound in metals that shimmered like starlight, their pages slick and living. Some vibrated when touched, others hissed softly as if irritated. One book, locked in a hexagonal frame, pulsed faintly with an inner glow whenever the moon rose full. These were relics not just from another time, but from another world. Mara had spent 50 years translating them. She was no xenolinguist. Her training came not from any university, but from deep instinct, long hours, and something else, something she refused to name. When she was 10, a dragon had spoken to her. Not in a dream, not in a fever, but right there at the edge of the ruined library, with its wings folded and its eyes vast like twin galaxies. It had only said one word, and then it had vanished. That word had etched itself into her memory, looping over and over through every page she turned for the next 70 years. Reader. Since then, she'd searched through every volume, hoping for an answer. Why her? Why that word? Why here? Then came the storms. It began subtly, a static pulse in the air that made the skin crawl. The clouds churned with colors unseen by human eyes. Thunder no longer sounded natural. It had weight and rhythm, like footsteps descending from the sky. Animals fled the village in droves, while people dreamt of wings and fire and scaled titans speaking in riddles. The world was changing, and none of it made sense. Not until the dragons began to appear. They came first as shadows, streaks across the moon, blotting out stars in perfect silence. Then as screams echoing from mountaintops. Finally, they descended, not in violence, but in gathering. Every third night, a new dragon landed at the cliffside, near the library where Mara worked. They did not speak. They did not destroy. They simply stood, huge, resplendent creatures, scaled in obsidian, crystal, smoke, and gold, and watched her. The villagers were terrified. They thought she had summoned them. Some whispered that she was a witch, others a prophet. Many simply left, abandoning homes that had lasted generations. Mara stayed, and still the dragons gathered. By the 7th arrival, Mara began to notice something else. Each new dragon carried a mark, an etching that glowed faintly upon their chest or talon. She recognized the symbols. They were excerpts from the very books she had read for decades. Specific words, phrases of power, warnings, names. It was not coincidence. They were responding to her, listening. The night before the 12th dragon came, Mara found a book she had never seen before. It had not been in the library. It was laid upon her pillow, bound in living sinew. The cover bore no title, only a smooth circular indentation in its center, the size of her palm. When she pressed her hand to it, The book opened of its own accord. She read the first line aloud, though the air crackled as if resisting. The one who reads may also command. And the book screamed, not a cry of pain, but of awakening. A roar echoed through her bones, vibrating marrow and memory alike. Her lantern burst, the windows shattered, and the storm that had loomed for weeks suddenly stopped, the clouds parting like curtains on a stage. Then silence. She collapsed, unconscious before she could turn the second page. When she awoke, 12 dragons encircled the ruined library. All were facing her. None moved, not even a breath. Mara stood, slower now, the book still glowing softly in her hand. And then one of them, larger than the rest, eyes burning with sapphire flame, took a single step forward, bowed its horned head, and murmured in a voice that shattered stone. The queen has spoken. The morning after the 12th dragon bowed, Keir the Los was silent. The air shimmered, distorted by some unseen pressure, like the world had been nudged slightly off balance. Nothing felt real anymore. Mara sat at the center of the ruined library, the book before her pulsing with that same warm glow. The 12 dragons had not left. They stood like ancient statues around the cliffs, unmoving, their eyes closed, their wings folded like the petals of enormous, forgotten flowers. She hadn't dared open the book again. Every instinct in her screamed that it wasn't a book, not in the way humans understood them. It breathed. It waited. When it spoke, it didn't use sound. It moved things inside her. That morning, a knock echoed from the library's battered wooden doors. Mara turned slowly, hand brushing the strange book protectively. No one had knocked in decades. The villagers used to leave food silently on the stone steps and quickly retreat. But this was no offering. It was a summons. The door creaked open. A woman stepped inside, tall and sharply dressed in off-world military leathers, thick boots, laser-scorched vambraces, a sleek transmitter fitted over her ear. Her hair was slicked back, her eyes a storm of gray. Behind her came 2 soldiers in matte exo-armor, plasma rifles slung low. The lead woman's voice cut the silence. Mara Kelwin, by Earth Federation Directive 8-19, you are hereby remanded into protective custody and placed under investigation regarding an unauthorized interspecies communication and suspected xenorelic activation. Mara stared at her for a long moment. You're from Offworld. I'm Commander Alira Vance, 3rd Strike Division, Orbital Watch. And yes, I am. We received the flare 10 hours ago. A signal no human has ever emitted. Dragon language? Ancient, impossible. Until now. She gestured toward the book. And you're holding the thing that caused it. Mara did not argue. Alira stepped closer, slowly, keeping her gaze locked on the old woman. You're not in trouble. Not yet. But Earth Command is terrified. Do you know what it means when dragons gather? We've seen the ruins on other planets. Where these creatures go, civilizations fall. And now they're bowing. To you. Mara felt her mouth go dry. I didn't ask for any of this. That's the thing, Alira said, lowering her voice. They don't come when we call. But they are here, and they haven't destroyed this place. You're not just some librarian in a cliffside ruin anymore. The dragons still hadn't moved. Mara nodded slowly. If I go with you, will you leave them alone? No. We'll try to dissect them, trap them, maybe kill them if we can. Because Earth Command doesn't take chances anymore. Alira's jaw tightened. Come with us. Help me convince them not to burn this mountain. The implication was clear. This wasn't a request. It was a final offer before orbital fire. Mara's hands shook as she reached for the glowing book. The moment her fingers touched the cover, the lead dragon outside stirred. Its eye opened, glorious, endless blue, and focused on the soldiers through the shattered library wall. A low growl rolled across the valley like the first rumble of a volcanic eruption. Alira swore under her breath. We'll escort you. Now. They moved quickly. Mara, the book clutched to her chest, walked stiffly down the path, surrounded by Alira and her guards. The village was deserted. Every door shut, every window shuttered. The sky above shimmered again, as if the atmosphere itself was holding its breath. They reached the edge of the drop platform where a stealth ship waited, its engines humming silently. As they stepped onto the lift, a single voice echoed through the valley. It wasn't human. She must not be taken. It was a dragon's voice, but not one of the 12 below. It came from above, from the sky. A new shape broke through the clouds, vast, serpentine, cloaked in shadow and violet flame. It spiraled downward in a storm of wings and screeching winds, causing the earth to tremble. Trees bent, stones lifted from the ground. The air grew heavy with raw power. The new dragon was different, older, wilder. Its scales shimmered with impossible colors, ink, blood, memory. It landed beside the others, dwarfing them. Where they were noble and regal, this one looked primordial. Alira's men raised their weapons. "Stand down," she barked. "It's too big. Plasma won't even tickle it." The great dragon lowered its head to Mara, staring deep into her. No words were spoken. Instead, images filled her mind. A dead world of burning skies, of dragons slain by machines, of human flags planted in ash. A single word pressed into her mind. Judgment. Mara stepped back, dizzy. I didn't order them. I just read." The dragon's thought was cold. Reading is command. Command is war. War is memory. You are the key. Alira pulled Mara behind her protectively, a gesture that surprised even herself. "Back away," she warned the beast. "You come closer, I will fire." The dragon didn't laugh. It didn't even acknowledge the threat. Instead, it turned its colossal head toward the other 12, and they knelt, not to it, but to Mara. Again, all of them. Alira's voice was barely a whisper. "What are you?" "I'm just a librarian," Mara said. "No, you're not. You're something else. Something we don't have a name for yet." The old book pulsed again, louder this time. The circular glyph on its cover flared, and from the sky, dozens more dragons appeared. Younglings, ancients, armored flyers like organic warships. They were converging, all of them, toward her. The book opened of its own accord, its pages fluttering until they stopped on one covered in fire script. This time, the text lifted from the page, swirling into the air in golden glyphs. Mara couldn't help herself. She read, "Rise, children of flame. The queen names the sky her court, and the void her domain. Let the old war end. Let the new one begin." And the mountain exploded in light. The soldiers were thrown from the platform. Alira screamed orders in her wrist calm. The sky filled with hundreds of dragons, roaring in unison. Their voices split the air, fractured clouds, rippled the very crust of the earth. From the glyphs in the air, a crown of light formed and hovered above Mara's head. The lead dragon, the ancient one, bowed, and as it did, the book slammed shut with a thunderclap that silenced the world. Mara collapsed, and when she opened her eyes, she was no longer on earth. Mara awoke on stone, though it was unlike any stone she'd felt before. It pulsed faintly beneath her cheek, warm and almost alive. When she opened her eyes, she gasped. The sky above her was black, but not the black of night. It was a rolling sea of stars trapped behind a crystal dome that covered an entire city. Great towers, forged from glassy obsidian and veins of molten gold, curved upward like talons. Dragons flew between them like birds in a windless world, silent and graceful. Their movements resonated in the air, as if space bent slightly with each beat of their wings. She sat up slowly, her bones aching from the last blast of energy, but otherwise intact. The crown of light was gone. The book was still in her hand, though its glow had faded to a faint shimmer. A voice greeted her. "You have crossed the threshold." Few ever do. She turned. A man stood before her, or at least something wearing the shape of a man. His body shimmered at the edges, like a reflection that didn't quite match its surface. His robes flowed unnaturally, as if caught in a breeze that wasn't there. And his eyes were galaxies. "You're not human," Mara said, her voice hoarse. "No, but I was once. Long before humanity forgot what it used to be." She tried to rise to her feet. He helped her without touching her, as if gravity around her had momentarily shifted. "Where am I?" The first roost, he said. This is where the bond began. Between dragons and your kind. Mara blinked. My kind? You mean humans? We were allies. He nodded solemnly. Partners. Creators. You were the first to awaken them. Not as beasts or enemies, but as minds. Spirits of fire and memory. You read their truth and gave it form. That was your gift. Mara's knees nearly gave out. She leaned against a curved pillar nearby. Then why did they disappear from Earth? Why did they stop speaking? Because your people forgot how to listen. The man, if he could be called that, gestured, and an image appeared before them. A vast battlefield, skies choked with fire, machines, both human and alien, fighting side by side, and dragons, thousands of them, falling from the heavens like burning angels. They were betrayed, used, twisted into weapons, and when they rebelled, humanity turned on them, sealed the gates between worlds, buried the books, silenced the readers. Mara stared at the image as it faded. Her mouth trembled. So, the books were keys? He nodded. Portals, instructions, contracts. But even more than that, they were memories stored in language your kind had forgotten how to pronounce. Until now. Her mind reeled. I never meant to awaken anything, she whispered. That's the nature of truth. It doesn't care if you meant to read it. It just needs to be read. He approached her again, this time with gravity in his voice. But there is something you must understand. Something even the dragons do not yet know. She lifted her eyes to meet his. What? You are not the first queen. The words hit her like a hammer. What? There was another before you. Long ago. She read the forbidden verses. She commanded the Black Flight. She burned 9 systems to ash before she was stopped. Mara felt her heartbeat spike. She was human too, chosen by the book, but corrupted by it. She didn't interpret, she obeyed. And the dragons, bound by the ancient oaths, had no choice but to follow. He stepped back and extended his hand. A new image formed, this time of a woman standing atop a mountain of skulls, her hair streaming like ink, her crown forged of real flame. Behind her, dragons screamed across the sky in agony. She called herself the Ember Queen, and her blood still echoes through the line of readers. Mara stared at the figure, and then slowly at her own trembling hands. No, that can't be me. I'm no queen. I don't want power. I only wanted to understand. The man's voice was softer now, and that is what makes you different. Perhaps. But the book does not just respond to thought. It responds to lineage. Mara's breath caught. You mean? Yes, you are descended from her. The floor seemed to vanish beneath her. Her knees buckled again, and this time the man let her fall. Why me? Because your line was hidden, forgotten, protected by the very dragons that once served her. They waited generations, searching for one who could read and choose not to destroy. He knelt beside her. You've read enough to awaken the covenant. But not all. There are still verses you haven't unlocked. Verses that could restore the balance, or plunge the universe back into fire. Mara pressed her hand against the book. Then help me. Teach me how to read safely. He shook his head. I cannot. I'm only a memory, an echo left behind for this moment. Everything else is up to you. The city trembled. Dragons overhead scattered like startled birds. What was that? Mara asked. The sky darkened, unnaturally, like a curtain being pulled. A jagged rift tore open across the crystal dome, and a shriek split the air. But it wasn't a dragon's cry. It was mechanical, cold, calculated. From the rift emerged a fleet, not of ships, but of constructs. Giant metallic beasts shaped like dragons, but twisted, artificial, armored, with spines of plasma and eyes like empty sockets. Behind them loomed a massive figure, not human, not dragon, but something forged in mockery of both. The voice returned, not from outside, from a book. The Ember Queen returns. Her soul has found another. Mara screamed, clutching her head. Visions poured into her, of fire, of control, of her voice shaping reality, of dragons burning worlds in her name. Her body spasmed. Her veins glowed gold. No, she cried. The book flew from her hands. The man was fading. His form shimmered. You must not let it speak for you. You must master it, or it will master you. The ground cracked. The metal dragons howled. From air, one of the living dragons swooped down and landed beside her. It was her original guardian, the one who first bowed. Its voice trembled with urgency. Mara, choose. Do you command, or do you listen? She turned, bleeding from her nose, her limbs shaking from the energy flooding her. And then the metallic queen descended from the rift, a weapon in her chest glowing with the same golden glyphs. It was her, a perfect reflection of Mara, but with eyes made of fire. The twin of Mara stood suspended in the air above the shattered city dome, her armored body pulsing with molten glyphs. She was taller, stronger, her form young and regal, draped in the ember flame of old war. Her hair crackled like a solar flare. Her mouth curved into a smile that held no joy. Dragons screamed as they scattered. The first roost, a place of peace, memory, and ancient pacts, quaked beneath the weight of an old curse reborn. Obsidian towers shattered. The ground cracked open, revealing rivers of light beneath the city's crust. Mara could barely stay standing. Her own shadow turned against her. The metallic dragons, drones in her double's command, circled the sky like vultures, raining down crimson beams of disruption. They struck the crystal dome, piercing it, setting fire to the air. One crashed into a tower and exploded, sending molten shrapnel across the plaza. But the living dragons, they fought back. They rose in waves of wings and fury, teeth flashing like comets. Fire met metal. Scale clashed with alloy. Thunder resounded as 100 ancient beasts engaged their twisted reflections. It was a war not of races, but of ideals, of will versus control. And at the heart of it stood Mara, shaking, crying, holding the book. The guardian dragon beside her, Vadril, the sapphire-eyed titan who first bowed, shielded her with its wings. A beam of red plasma struck its side and sizzled off with a roar. You must speak, Vadril said, lowering its massive head to her level. She is your echo, your mistake, but only you can unmake her. I don't know how, Mara whispered, the book now humming like a caged storm in her arms. She's stronger than me. She's everything I could be if I let the book decide for me. Vadril's voice dropped to a growl. Then don't let it decide. Command it. Speak not with fear, but truth. Your truth. Mara swallowed hard, the blood still trickling from her nose, her body trembling under the weight of destiny. The Ember Queen floated downward, her boots not touching the ground. Every step she took left a scorch mark. You're weak, she said softly. You begged for knowledge, but feared its price. You speak to dragons like they're equals, but they were made to serve. You were meant to rule. No one was made to serve. Mara shouted, her voice cracking. Not them, not me, not even you. I am you, the queen said, her golden eyes narrowing. The part of you that still wants control. The part that remembers how easily the world listens when we speak with fire. The book opened again. Pages fluttered on their own, the air thick with ancient language. Glyphs rose between them like burning butterflies, crackling with potential. Vadril's wings shielded her again as another explosion erupted nearby. But Mara had stopped trembling. She stepped from the dragon's protection. The plaza had become a war zone, dragons diving and roaring, machines hissing and sparking, towers falling like trees in a storm. But in the eye of it all stood the two women, old and young, true and corrupted. Mara raised the book. The queen tilted her head. You dare invoke it against me? The queen whispered. You don't even know its final name. No, Mara said, but I know its purpose. And she spoke, not a spell, but a truth. We are not rulers. We are readers. The story is not ours to command. It is ours to understand. The book pulsed and stopped obeying the queen. The glyphs that had danced around her began to flicker. Her flaming crown dimmed slightly. She snarled, You would destroy me for humility? I would set the dragons free, Mara said. She turned the page, and this time the book showed her something new. Not fire, not war, but memory. She spoke again, her voice steadier now. The first flame gave them breath, but we gave them names. And names are not chains. They are promises. As the words rang out, the living dragons stopped fighting. So did the metal ones. A quiet spread through the city like the eye of a storm. One by one, the drones faltered in flight, slowed, and looked down. They were remembering. Inside their corrupted code were echoes of what they once were: memory stone, blood glyph, soul-etched spirit in metal bone. The book's language, her language, was rewriting them. The queen screamed. Her eyes flared as she launched herself forward, flaming sword in hand, aimed at Mara's heart. Mara didn't move. The book moved for her. A wall of living text formed around her, sentences woven like armor, verses turned to shields. The queen's blade struck the field and shattered into 1,000 letters that blew away like ash. "You cannot kill a story that chooses to grow," Mara whispered. The queen staggered back, weakened. Her flames guttered. And then the dragons came. Not in rage, but in chorus. They surrounded her, wings folded in respect, their bodies forming a ring of sky and starlight. One by one, they bowed, not to her power but to her choice. Even the corrupted drones bowed. And in that moment, the queen's fire died completely. She sank to her knees, the glyphs around her fading, her face suddenly confused, almost human. "I just want it to matter," she said, barely audible. Mara knelt with her, placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did. But pain doesn't have to be legacy." Then she whispered the last phrase in the book aloud. "Let the fire remember love." A final light burst from the pages, not destruction, but restoration. It surged out, blanketing the city, passing through stone and metal, dragon and drone, rewriting the old war into memory. The queen dissolved, no scream, no violence. Just a sigh, a tear, and a return to the stars. Mara collapsed again, the book closing softly beside her. The war had ended, but something new had begun. From above, the sky opened, not from weapons, but from ships descending in peace. Humans, ambassadors, and someone was calling her name. Mara Kelwyn. The voice calling her name came from beyond the veil of light. Mara stirred slowly. Her bones ached with the weight of ages, but the weariness in her chest had changed. It wasn't just exhaustion, it was release. Like an ancient knot inside her had finally loosened. When she opened her eyes, she was still in the heart of the first roost. But it was no longer a battlefield. The city shimmered with golden light, not from fire, but renewal. The obsidian towers had begun to reform, each strand of molten stone moving like vines regrowing around invisible scaffolds. The skies above were clear, showing the stars as they had once been, brilliant, uncrowded, free. The drones were gone. No, transformed. Where once there had been mechanical horrors, now sleek dragon forms glided through the sky, reborn in shapes of light and steel, hybrid creatures, living memories made whole. The circle of dragons stood in quiet vigil around Mara, their eyes luminous with respect. Vadril, her guardian, towered over her once more, breathing slowly as if meditating. And stepping carefully through the now-healed plaza came Commander Elira Vance. Her uniform was scorched. Her arm was wrapped in a crude sling, and a scar traced along her cheek where a metal shard had struck, but she walked tall, and her eyes were no longer filled with suspicion. They were filled with wonder. "You're alive," Elira said softly. "So are they," Mara whispered, gesturing around to the dragons. Elira stepped closer and knelt beside her. "We thought we lost you when the rift opened. I tried to stop the queen, but nothing we did mattered." Then the book, the light, she shook her head. "Command saw everything. All of Earth saw it." Mara nodded slowly. "I didn't destroy her. I set her free." "Was she you?" Elira asked. "She was what I could have been, if I had chosen power over understanding. If I believed the dragons were mine to control instead of beings to respect." Elira leaned back, staring up at the sky, now filled with dragons flying peacefully above like constellations. "You ended a war we didn't even know we were still fighting." Mara smiled weakly. "No, I ended a memory." From beside her, Vadril rumbled, "and restored another." Mara turned toward him. You've been with me the longest. Since the beginning. Why? Because the last queen cursed us into silence, he said. But we swore to wait for the one who would listen, not command. The one who would understand that our fire was not for conquest, but truth. Mara looked down at the book still resting at her side. Its light had dimmed, no longer searing or pulsing. It now looked content, like a candle allowed to rest after a long vigil. So what happens now? She asked. Vaudrell bowed his head. You rewrite the covenant, not with blood or flame, but with words, with choice. You will be our queen, not of war, but of memory. A keeper, not a conqueror. Elira exhaled slowly. You realize the Federation is going to want to study all of this. The dragons, this place, that book. They can study, Mara said, but they cannot control. She stood, slowly, with help from Vaudrell's lowered wing. You'll need me to speak for you, Elira added. They'll listen to me now. I saw it firsthand, and if I have to go to the Interstellar Council myself, I will. You're not afraid anymore, Mara said. Elira smirked. Terrified, but it's not the same kind of fear. It's the kind that makes you pay attention. Together they walked toward the center of the plaza, where a circular platform now rose from the stone, an ancient podium once lost beneath rubble. The glyphs etched into it shimmered as Mara approached. Above it floated a fragment of crystal, pulsing with the same light as the book. Vaudrell spoke again. This is the heart page, the original covenant. All who have read it have either burned or been reborn. Mara placed the book beside the crystal. The moment the two touched, a sphere of golden light surrounded her. Time seemed to slow. The air around her thickened with memory, of her grandmother's voice reading by firelight, of the first dragon she saw as a child, of the day she found the pulsing tome on her pillow. Inside the sphere, she felt the presence of those who had come before her. Queens, yes, but also scribes, scholars, those who failed, those who endured, and she felt the choice. She could leave it here. Let the knowledge vanish. Let the dragons fade again. Let the world forget once more, because remembering carried risk. Or she could write, not just her story, their story, and change the future. Mara took a deep breath. I choose to remember. The crystal flared. The book dissolved into the light, its words scattering into the air and embedding themselves into the platform, into the walls, into the dragons themselves. They were free, but also now known. The light faded. The sky turned. And above them, a new constellation burned into existence. 12 stars in a ring, surrounding a central flame. The galaxy would call it the Queen's Circle, but to Mara, it was simply the place where truth had returned. Weeks passed. Mara remained in the first roost, not as a ruler, but as a guide. The dragons did not demand worship. They flew where they pleased, returned when called. But no longer did they hide in exile. Word spread across the stars. Scholars arrived, artists, pilgrims, even children from distant colonies, brought to witness the place where dragons and humans had learned to speak again. Mara taught them, not just the language, but the listening. Elira visited often, serving as ambassador between the Roost and the Earth Federation. Her reports transformed the way humanity viewed the ancient species once labeled myth or enemy. Fear shifted into fascination. Some, of course, still whispered that Mara could still become like the queen who burned worlds. That power like that didn't just go away. But Mara didn't silence them. She simply kept reading. Until one evening, as stars wheeled slowly above the roost, the wind shifted, and a single page fluttered loose from the stone beneath the heart crystal. It was not from the old book. It was new, blank, waiting. Mara picked it up, smiled softly. Another story? And from the shadows beyond the stars, something ancient stirred. Not evil, but curious. The dragons lifted their heads, and far across the galaxy, in a dead system where nothing had stirred in eons, a second book opened. 1,000 years passed, and the universe changed. The event at the first roost, the moment Mara Kelwin rewrote the Covenant, became a cornerstone of galactic history. It was no longer just a footnote in human records or a debated myth among xenohistorians. It became the axis upon which a new era turned. the age of fire and memory. The dragons did not vanish again. Instead, they became keepers of peace, defenders of truth, and living archives of ancient knowledge. No longer beasts of war or targets of fear, they were welcomed into the fabric of interstellar society, though never tamed, never owned. They were allies. Mara's teachings, known as the Verses of Listening, were inscribed across temples, orbital academies, and even interspecies legal courts. The verses taught restraint in power, curiosity in fear, and reverence in knowledge. They became the foundation of a new alliance, a coalition not bound by territory, but by understanding. The old Earth Federation crumbled within decades. In its place rose the sovereign accord of free worlds, a union founded on shared memory rather than military strength. At its heart stood a new monument, forged from black stone and starlight, the Tower of the First Reader. Its topmost spire reached into low orbit above the roost and projected a single ever-shifting sentence in 1,000 languages. Power obeys, but truth listens. Every visitor to the tower saw a different phrase, one that resonated with them, drawn from the latent memory woven into the crystal at its core. Mara Kelwin herself passed peacefully decades after the First Covenant was restored, though many swore they saw her walking the roost long after. Some said she became one with the dragons. Others claimed she left behind a hidden page, one that could awaken a new reader should the need ever arise again. Her crown, never made of metal, was preserved not in a vault but in the pages of the Book of Echoes, a living document updated through thought, linked telepathically to those who still practice the reader's way. Its pages grew with each new truth discovered by those willing to listen. But not all consequences were expected. In a distant system on the edge of the old warfront, the signal of the restored covenant reached a species long forgotten, the Krynar. Ancient enemies of the dragons, they had buried themselves beneath ice and iron after their defeat millennia ago. When they awoke, they were not angry. They were inspired. They had seen dragons as tyrants, as beasts of flame. Now they saw them as forgiven. The Krynar emerged not with weapons, but with questions. They sought the roost, and they came bearing their own books. Each one pulsed with unfamiliar light. Different glyphs, different memories. Mara's legacy had not just resurrected the dragons. It had sparked a revolution of remembering. Soon, across dozens of galaxies, species began unearthing their own ancient texts, rewriting their own forgotten truths. Forgotten alliances were rekindled. Dead gods were reinterpreted. Former conquerors stood trial under new moral systems based on ancient oaths once lost to time. And through it all, the humans were watched. With awe, with hesitation, with reverence. They had once been feared for their adaptability, their resilience, their tendency to escalate conflict just to win. Now, they were feared and admired for something far more dangerous. They could change stories, entire civilizations, by reading, by choosing. The dragons never bowed again, not as they did to Mara, but they flew beside human vessels in great convoys through star lanes. They guarded ancient libraries on gas giants. They perched on comet outposts where scholars translated echoes of long-dead languages. No warlord could touch the roost. No empire dared challenge a reader, because they knew what had happened the last time. They had seen the fire, and what came after. On one barren moon, far from any known trade route, a mining crew stumbled upon a sealed chamber beneath volcanic glass. At its heart was a single pedestal, upon which lay a book bound in unknown metal, humming faintly with light. No one could open it. Not yet, but someone had etched words onto the pedestal in a language older than their own, one the dragons refused to translate, and the humans recognized immediately. It was Mara's final verse. The queen is gone, but the page turns. Back on Earth, long since transformed into a museum world where no new cities were allowed to rise, a small child walked the ruins of Kerthalos. The stones remained where Mara once lived. The library still leaned against the cliffs. Its door, though ancient, opened for the girl without a creak. Inside, a single lantern lit on its own. And from the corner of the room, nestled between centuries of dust and silence, a book shifted, just slightly, enough to show its edge. The girl stepped forward. She didn't speak. She listened. And somewhere across the stars, a dragon opened its eyes. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell. Names were lost, planets renamed, maps rewritten. But one phrase remained whispered among the stars, words spoken in defiance, in hope, in unbreakable will. Human, don't stop.